Like the Villanovans before them, the Etruscans were superb metal workers, but the processing of the iron in northwestern Tuscany, in the metal-rich area of Populonia, was difficult, and it took a toll on the workers. D.H. Lawrence, that famous writer of the earlier 20th century, wrote in his book Etruscan Places about how much the Etruscans enjoyed life and living based on the tomb paintings that he had viewed at sites such as Tarquinia. But at Populonia, we get a different view of these same Etruscans. Watch. The Etruscans developed a reputation for being the most mysterious of ancient Mediterranean peoples. Partly, of course, because we cannot read their language very well, and also because they had elaborate religious rituals. The emotional, sensual D.H. Lawrence wrote in his Etruscan Places in 1929, "Death to the Etruscans was a pleasant continuance of life, with jewels and wine and flutes playing for the dance. It was just a natural continuance of the fullness of life. Everything was in terms of life and of living." That's what Lawrence said. He disliked big museums and scholarly scientific investigation of the Etruscans, preferring instead to value his own emotional response to them. But were they really always so full of love and life? To answer that question, we must visit Populonia in northwestern Tuscany.
Mining and metallurgy in the ancient world is fairly uniform throughout the Greek, Roman, and Etruscan civilizations. Mining is done in two primary ways. If it's a valuable metal, and it's worth doing what's called deep vein mining, which means you dig far into the ground, and deep shafts into the ground. And those are usually no more than a meter high. But that's fairly rare, especially because metals like iron occur so commonly and so close to the surface that what's called open cast mines, which are just large pits in the earth, can be worked in, and metals can be extracted from fairly close to the surface. We know this is what happens with the Etruscans, especially around Populonia, which from a very early period is a center of metal production in the Mediterranean. The area around the Etruscan center of Populonia is blessed with a mountain of metals. In fact, that's actually the name of the range of hills near Populonia. They're called the Colline Metallifere, the metal-bearing hills, because they're just so rich and dense with metals. We know that Populonia was a metallurgical production center from a very early time in the Mediterranean, and produced metals like iron, but also lead and silver, some gold, and even some tin, which is actually really rare for the Mediterranean to have a tin production.
The work was made principally by slaves because it was hard, and there was lots of pollution in the air in the industry of this job. The owner of the manufacture was a free man, but the people who work in the process were principally slaves. To make iron, they need oven where cooking iron, making a not too big circular, generally circular oven, and put inside it a layer of urn called hematite, in this case for Populonia, and charcoal, hematite and charcoal. Then during the process of firing, the hematite was divided, and on the bottom of the oven came the iron, and outside the iron slag. Every time they have to broken the oven to take the iron to be sold, and we archaeologists find as traces of iron smelting the iron slag, so the trash of the work. Populonia is wonderful because it is the only Etruscan city built on the sea. And if you come and you want to visit the remains of Etruscan civilization of Populonia, you can visit their necropolis, built starting from the 7th century BCE until the beginning of Romanization, so until 4th and 3rd century BCE.